Hi everyone, Sabrina here from Scrappy Tales Crafts, and today I'll be showing you a birthday card that I created using some Trinity stamp products. I will be using a Sweet Surprise, the stamp and coordinating die, and then I'm also going to use this confetti stencil, as well as a few embellishments. I will be creating a birthday card, so I'm going to start this card off by creating my background. I chose some Memento Dewdrop inks that kind of matched the embellishments that I'm going to use. So basically rainbow colors, but more on the pastel side. So I believe the way that this stencil works is there's two stencils in a pack, and they layer together. So the first layer, I'm going to add my lighter colors. In this case, it's Sky Blue, Angel Pink, and Dandelion. I will have all the inks I used listed down below. And then once you add the second stencil on top, there'll be a little bit of overlap on some of the confetti pieces, and that's when you'd add your darker color. So it's a really cool stencil set. The side that I'm using here is the small confetti pieces, but if you flip it, you can use the ribbon side, and they're just kind of like cascading ribbons. And when you layer the second layer on top, you get dimensional ribbons, which is really cool. So I want to give that a try on a future video. So here I'm just adding my inks. I'm using some finger daubers. I like them because they're small, so I can kind of use them to pick the exact confetti pieces that I want to color in with that particular ink. Because like I said, I wanted this to be a rainbow. So I just took off that first stencil and now I'm adding the second one. And like I said, some of the confetti pieces will overlap the ones that I've already added to the panel. And I think that's intentional because confetti wouldn't all, there would be some overlap if you just drop confetti. So I think the stencil is really cool. I'm not much of a stencil person, but Trinity Stamps has some really cool ones, and I'm going to try to use them more. So for the second layer, I'm using Rosebud, Tangelo, and Prickled Pear, I think, for my last color. So I'm just randomly adding the ink where I want. And at first I thought I just wanted the top of my panel to have confetti, but I will end up continuing the confetti downwards to cover the entire panel. This panel is 110-pound white Neenah cardstock cut to 4 by 5 1/4 inches. You can see I'm adding a sheet of paper above. That way I don't add ink where I don't want to. And I'm just repeating the process. I'm starting with that first stencil, adding my lighter colors. You can see at this point I have them all laid out. And you can see my finger daubers some of them are labeled. I don't have them all. But some of these colors I use quite often, like Rosebud and Angel Pink. So some of my ink daubers I do label. Alright, so now I'm going to add my second stencil. You can see I clean them just with a baby wipe. And like I said, because some of the confetti overlaps, you want to make sure that you're not mixing two colors that will create brown. So in order to avoid that, I would recommend not combining two complementary colors. And luckily that worked out for me. So I'm just going to finish up here. I have that little corner at the bottom. And I didn't like how white it was, and I felt like the background was too busy. So to tone it back, I'm going to take a few of the colors that I used in the background and I'm going to ink blend this panel. So I'm starting with Tangelo at the bottom, Rosebud in the center, and then Angel Pink towards the top. But I will let that Angel Pink fade out into white. So Memento inks, I think, are dye inks. They're not the greatest at blending, but you can definitely work at them to create a pretty decent blend. I don't own a lot of distress inks or oxides, and I really wanted to use the exact colors that were already on the panel, so I just stuck with these 3 colors. I worked a little bit harder to get that blend, but I like how that turned out. So I'm going to die cut a circle from the top right-hand corner of this panel. And I'm also going to stamp out the cupcake from Sweet Surprise. I love the size of this cupcake. It really can stand as the focal point on a card. I also stamped out the candle, but I won't end up using that. I stamped that out with my Memento Tuxedo black ink, and that is because I will be copic coloring. So I'm kind of laying out what this card might look like. Trying to figure out if I want to use that candle, but in the end I decided not to. So I'm going to show you how I colored this cupcake. It took me in real time 10 minutes to color, and it was a lot of fun. I've never colored frosting before, and you can create some really dramatic highlights with frosting. So how I colored it is I started with my darkest marker, as I always do, and I mapped out my shadow areas. You can see I went around the entire frosting, and I also brought that marker in the center where I guess the icing would overlap. I don't know how I can describe it, where it folds. And you can see the artist has kind of indicated where those folds are because they brought that outline in towards the center more. So I just followed that outline and added my shadows there. Then I'm going over it with my midtone. And I actually had 2 midtones for this card, and that's because my highlight I left white. You can see I left quite a bit of white space, and I don't typically do that. I like to go over it with a light marker, but like I said, in the case of frosting, I really like that dramatic, bright highlight, so I'm really happy with how that turned out. For the cake portion, I wanted a vanilla cake, so I first colored it in yellow, and I just felt like that was a very pale cupcake. It probably didn't taste good, so I'm going to warm it up a bit, bake it a little longer, and I'm adding E13 to the edges, going over it again with my yellow because, like I said, I really wanted that vanilla color. And then for the wrapper, I decided to color it in rainbow colors. Again, I chose colors based off the sprinkles that I'm going to use as my shaker bits. So I didn't add any red to my rainbow, I replaced it with pink. For the wrapper, I'm only using 2 markers per color. I'm adding my darker marker to the top and bottom of the wrapper, leaving a white center that I can go over with my lightest marker to create that highlight. Alright, so I'm just going to add that last bit of green, and that will complete my cupcake. I'm going to add that to my panel to see how that looks. And then I'm going to work on my shaker window. So behind the window I wanted my sentiment. I decided to chop one of the sentiments from the Sweet Surprise stamp set in half so that I can stack the sentiment and it will fit nicer on my panel here. I'm using the cupcake as a guide to help me know where to stamp. And I didn't stamp it that well the first time, so I just flipped it over and stamped it again. You can see I'm stamping on a white circle that's slightly larger than my window circle, and the edges were cut off, but it didn't matter since you don't see it anyway. Now I felt like my panel was missing something, so off camera I die cut this Celebrate die from the coordinating die set 3 times from black cardstock, and I'm going to layer all of those word dies together to create a dimensional one. I'm using art glitter glue to attach each of these word dies together. And I love this effect. I've been doing it to all of my word dies. And I'm using 100-pound black cardstock, so it is quite thick once I add this third layer. And then just to add some sparkle, I also die cut the Celebrate from some glitter silver cardstock from my stash. And I'm going to add that on top of the black, slightly offsetting it. That way it can really stand out against that cupcake, because I will be layering part of the sentiment over that rainbow wrapper. And the E cuts separately from the Celebrate, so I did the same thing with the E off camera. Alright, and so now I'm going to work on the shaker. I'm taking this double mounted foam tape. This is by ULINE. I really like it for shaker cards because, like I said, it's double mounted, so you don't have to take the time of layering your foam tape up twice. I will have it linked down below. I get a lot of questions about this tape. It is really sticky, so I'm not sure if I recommend it or not. If you're someone who glues panels on crooked, this tape might not be the best for you. In fact, I actually make my sentiment panel crooked. In the end, I actually kind of like how that looks. But yeah, if I wanted to redo it, I probably couldn't, just because this tape is super sticky. So now I'm adding my embellishments into the shaker window. I chose some cupcake sprinkles, which are so adorable. I was so excited to work with this cupcake just for those embellishments. I also added some little, they're kind of like seed beads. I added a few of those into the shaker window. Now I'm adding my sentiment circle, and like I said, I did make that crooked, and you'll see when I flip this over. I'm going to remove the backing on the rest of the foam tape, and I just knocked my sprinkles over, which always seems to happen on camera. Okay, and then here you can see that sentiment's slightly crooked, but I think it just adds character. That's what I'll call it, character. But I do like how those sprinkles turned out. So I'm going to glue down my cupcake with my art glitter glue. And then I will glue down my Celebrate sentiment. Off camera, I white heat embossed Let's, so that I can attach that above my Celebrate so it reads Let's Celebrate. And that Let's sentiment is also in the Sweet Surprise stamp set. So here is that. I'm just going to add a little bit of foam tape behind it so it is on the same level as that Celebrate word die. And then I just added that right above next to the cupcake. I'm going to add some ATG tape to my card base, and you can see I matted it onto some black cardstock that will cover the entire card base. So that will complete today's card. Please let me know what you guys think. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below. If you're interested to see the products that I used, I will have them listed down below. Thanks again so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!